Good evening, guys. My name's Lorraine Copes, and I am the founder of BAME in Hospitality. I want to welcome you this evening and thank you for joining us for the second of a two-part series, Black in Hospitality, which is our celebration of Black History Month. As per Monday, we'll be joined by some amazing leaders, entrepreneurs within the hospitality, food and drink space. But before we start, I want to thank our amazing sponsors, who are some of my favorite Black-owned food and beverage brands. Jerk It Up Sauce by Danes Catering, Shwen Shwen by Maria Bradford, Woodford and Warner, Echo Brewery, Life of Tree, and Sham Sham Hot Sauce. Also, for those of you that follow us on Instagram, you would have seen that for the past week and a half, we have ran a giveaway, a food and drink hamper. So bear with us until the end and we'll be announcing who the winner is. In terms of the format for tonight, we'll follow the same format that we did on Monday. So for the first 45 minutes, it will be a panel discussion, and that will be followed by 15 minutes, giving you guys the opportunity to ask the panel any questions that you may have. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our panelists to introduce themselves. Can we start with you, Barbara?
Hello, good evening. Thanks for having me, Lorraine. My name is Barbara Bray, and I'm a food safety and nutrition consultant. So I work with small and medium food businesses, mainly on getting them to a certain food standard so they can supply into the retail and the food service sector. And I also help them with nutrition strategy, particularly looking at how they can get healthy and sustainable nutrition into their business.
Thank you. Ire, can we have you next, please? You're on mute.
Hello, sorry about that.
Okay.
Thank you, Lorraine. I'm Ire Hassan Adukale, co-founder and managing director of Ikoyi Restaurants in London.
Thank you. Jenna?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jenna Ba. I'm a drink specialist, let's say, passionate about whiskey and spices. I'm working as a new-to-world brand advocacy for Diageo and the Reserve portfolio, looking after a few brands, which I call kind of funky, cool whiskey, like Bullet and Copper Dog and Hague Club. And I'm really passionate about how can we create kind of communities and avenues and social capital for people in hospitality to build careers.
Thank you. And last but not least, Didier?
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Didier Gay. I'm the Entertainment Director UK for Park Plaza Hotel Group. And I organize the live music entertainment for the hotels for the past 10 years.
Thank you. And so the first question I have for you is for the audience to understand a bit more about your pathway into the food and beverage industry. And Didier, can I start with you?
Okay, so the genesis into my pathway into the food and beverage industry. Okay, let's say that from an early age, I used to organize events. I started at a university doing student parties in clubs in Paris. I was probably more focused on partying than studying. And then I discovered at some point Ibiza, where I was invited as a friend at a friend's house for a month in August. I've never been to Spain, even less to Baleares. And as French, especially as Parisian, I used to have like a very chauvinistic opinion of the clubbing scene in Paris with iconic clubs like Les Bains Douches or Palace, which was the equivalent of Studio 54 in New York. But when I arrived in Ibiza and I discovered the nightlife, it was a complete game changer. I discovered house music, which was just starting to spread in Europe. You had clubs like Pasha, Amnesia, Crew at the time, which is now Privilege, one of the biggest club in the world with more than 10,000 people. And it was just like another level, another dimension. So when I came back to Paris, I realized that I wanted to be part of this new movement. But in Paris, you could hardly find clubs, that play house music. So I used to go to Belgium, like clubs like Café d'Anvers, Amsterdam, legendary club like the Roxy or the Eat, where the clubbing scene was like fantastic and way in advance, compared, to the rest of Europe. So after a year mainly partying while I was still at university, I decided to go back and spend the whole summer in Ibiza. And the rest is history. From there, I met key people in my life, and I started to work as PR for bars, for clubs, doing different parties, working for David Guetta at Pasha, among many other parties. After work, I started to work as well as booking manager, selling Ibiza club party concept worldwide. I lived abroad for several years, Ibiza, Barcelona, Tel Aviv, Miami, working mainly in nightlife and organizing events. And after heartbreak, it happens, I went back to Paris, where a good friend of mine had an upcoming event agency working with established brands, doing big corporate events. And it was a learning curve for me. You work, with a proper brief. Everything is meticulously detailed and timed. You needed to respect deadline. You deal with corporate clients, and the approach was completely different from what I used to have in my many years in nightlife and clubbing. So I learned a lot. It was a great experience, and during all these years, I worked with artists, musicians, performers, sound and light technician, stage designer, and so on and so on. But I think I had the bug, and I ended up working back in nightlife, opening my own DJ booking agency with some friends. Afterwards, I collaborated as well with another friend of mine with a booking agency and a record label called Freak and Chic, with upcoming DJs, from the French Touch, like Dan Genassia, Shonky, Diet Sunderon, who became more recently Apollonia, the famous DJ collective. So my pathway to hospitality from that. So during all these travels, I had met some executive at Park Plaza, and we had always kept in touch. So one day they contacted me and asked me if I would be interested in curating the musical program for their new flagship hotel, the Park Plaza Westminster Bridge, in London, opening in March 2010. I was not close to the idea, but to be honest with you, it's true that I've been living like in warm, hot places next to the sea, beside Paris. And I've been twice in London before. I had been twice in London before. And for me, London was synonymous of rain, cold. I think at the time I went, there were like still fog. So for me, the idea of moving and living to London was not the most appealing, to be honest with you. But sometimes the universe, has a strange way and conspired to make things happen. As the timing could not be more ideal, because I needed to go to London for a friend's event mid-November, so like a few months just before the opening of the hotel. So they told me that I told them that I would actually be in London during this weekend, so they could show me actually the property. And so they came to pick me up from the hotel with a cab. We went through Marylebone, Buckingham Palace. This day, it was mid-November, was a beautiful day. It was sunny. It was very nice. I arrived in Big Ben, and they tell me, "Oh, what do you see across the bridge?" And across the bridge, there was like this huge building, beautiful, majestic. And I say, "Oh, I don't know." And it's like a beautiful place. I say, "Oh, but actually, that's the new hotel. That's Park Plaza Westminster Bridge." So we're crossing the bridge. We're going to the hotel. They make me the show round. They show me the place, Primo Bar, where they wanted, to do the live music. They show me the suites, the rooms, the ballroom, which is like one of the biggest ballroom without pillar in London. And so we did the show round like for an hour approximately. And the next day I had to go back to Paris. So I remember that when I was in the Eurostar going back to Paris, I was like, wow, the place looks really nice. I had like a really, really great time in London. And it was actually New Year's Eve, like so a month and a half later. And I was thinking, you know what? It's been a long time I'm in Paris. I may need new challenges in my life. And why not? Let's be, why not? So I called my friends at Back Plaza. I told them, hello guys, I just wanted to find out, if you are still looking for someone, for this position. And they told me, you know what, we interview a few people, but if you tell us, that you really want the job, it's for you, and you come in March and the job is yours. And I said, you know what? Okay, let's do that.
Wow.
And I came in March, for the opening of the hotel. So and I've been there like in the group for the past 10 years, and here I am.
Thank you, Didier. We're going to move on to Jenna. Jenna, could you just share with us your pathway into the food and drink sector, or the drink sector, actually?
Yeah, I think there were kind of 3 steps. That moment when you're almost like you're a teenager. I think I must have been about 16 or 17, and you think, okay, what do I want to do? What do I like? What can I do? And I'm quite an empath. I can't really see people suffering, and I'd like to see people as happy as I can. And because my singing is just not good, I couldn't really be a rock star. So I really had to go into something that's like hospitality, when you're around people in their best moments, or you're trying to make their best moments. So that was like kind of step 1 of like decision, and step 2 was then being really curious, and London, and then traveling before living in London, and places where you live just open you up to this kind of a feeling of how much is happening and how much is really possible. So I've had the chance to like step in and work in some of the great, really cool establishments in London that we were doing the right things, like at the Brompton Club in like the 2010s. And we were just creating an entire way of having brunch and dinner, and then turning into a nightclub, but in the same time fine cocktails, and a really membership community. And same was like Chiltern Firehouse later. And so I quite liked hotel bars in the same time, but events was really the interesting curiosity. So I had the chance to work with like Secret Cinema and do a lot of work with Sweet and Chili, like events everywhere from Grand Prix in Monaco and Cannes Lions to Saint-Tropez, Les Ambières, not only in the south of France, like Ibiza, and just loads of cool stuff. So then you're just realizing, wow, there is so much space for creativity and people to actually perceive it, and people who are doing amazing things. And then it was a bit more about, okay, now I need to work out how to sell and talk and consult, basically, and work with teams in different places. I was like step 3 into things. So then I did some work in Mykonos, or worked towards helping a place open up in India, and just meeting people and understanding different teams and ways of working. And then at some point when I was like in India, and I was probably missing London and events that are not in one place, but they're like moving. I got a call that there's a job in Diageo for like Bullet. There was BA, very much kind of events and vibes and creating and uniting culture around events and working with creatives. So super fun. So I've jumped on board. It's been 3.5 years. I'm now working as global brand ambassador within our advocacy team. So what we normally do is try and create an environment in which people can share stories around the glass and help to curate the right people and the right stories it's really a thriving environment in which we want to be in, because like whiskey is just a fuel.
Okay, super. Thank you, Jenna. Barbara, can you share with us your pathway?
Yes, it seems less shiny than the hospitality pathway, it has to be said. Mine starts with a passion. As a child, I was absolutely fascinated by food, whether it was, harvesting it at the pick your own, preparing it in the kitchen, or growing own food at home and experimenting with that. That was my thing. But as a child, obviously, you don't know what options are available to you when you become an adult and what jobs you can do. And I remember thinking when I was about 13, 14, well, maybe I could be a dietitian. I remember my dad saying to me, like, that is not going to keep you in the lifestyle you've been accustomed to. So you might want to find something else. And I was really interested in experimenting with food. So the whole food science piece. And I was looking with biology experiments, making yogurt and various things like that. And at school, because nobody had ever shown an interest in the food industry, they didn't really have anything off the shelf for me. So one of my teachers organised for the careers day for somebody from the dairy industry, a food scientist, to come and talk to me about careers in the food industry. And I spent probably half an hour with this lady. I think I was the only child who did spend any time with this lady. But I was absolutely hooked because she told me about how you can take a raw material and make it into something that's a food. And it just sat with my whole ethos about feeding people and feeding people well. And, at the end of it, I thought, right, I'm going to go to university and I'm going to do that thing. And as it turned out, I did apply to go and do food science at university, but I didn't get the grade that I needed in chemistry. And I was like, what am I going to do? My dreams are shattered. And as it turned out, I did get enough points overall to do food technology, which turned out to be a much better option for me because it was a multidisciplinary topic. So what happens in food technology, you learn about food science, food chemistry, food microbiology, food marketing, management of people, the whole shebang. And that really suited my personality because you do learn about launching a business and being entrepreneurial in that multidisciplinary way. And we were able to go out into industry and have 6 months in different businesses and swap over and try new things. And it just fed my curious nature of constantly wanting to know what else. And because I was graduating in the 90s, that's when a lot of the reformulation around food, so the stripping away of the fat, putting fat replacers in, adding sugar, all the naughty stuff that we're now trying to undo and become more healthy and sustainable. That was my generation. Now we're coming back and saying, let's make it healthy and sustainable because what we did back then isn't any good. But I think when you're passionate about food and passionate about doing a good job, it doesn't really matter where you go. I think you put your energy and your life into it. And, right from the field, I really like walking the fields or walking the crops right until you see like a mashed potato ready-made and on a plate. It's a great experience seeing that you've been part of that journey.
Nice. Thank you for that, Barbara. And I think the common thread so far has definitely been passion, which is fantastic. Ire, last but not least, could you tell us about your pathway, more recent pathway into hospitality?
Hospitality, yeah, mine is not as interesting, I guess. I left university and I worked in the city for 6 years, but hospitality had always been a passion. After 6 years, I was ready for a change, and that passion kept pulling me back. And I thought, okay, maybe I was thinking of a way to go into hospitality, and I was thinking of a restaurant, but not quite the restaurant that we have now. I was thinking about it in a different way, and because I'm not a chef, so I wasn't going to be a chef restaurant. But then my friend Jeremy, who I lived with at the time, we always spoke about doing a restaurant together, and we tried to speak about ways we redefine hospitality and how things were done in London restaurants and how we could do them differently. So that was the conversation we had. But then I was going on with this different restaurant project, and I asked him to write me a menu. and he wrote a menu, and then I said, actually, do you want to work on this? And then he said yes, and yeah, so we find ourselves looking for a space. Took us 2 years to find a space in central London. We wanted to be somewhere that was accessible to the whole of London. At the time, that was central London, I guess. Not so much anymore, but I mean, we've been there 3 years. Yeah, that's my journey.
Thank you very much. And you know, I think that thread that I mentioned runs throughout you all in terms of that passion was there for your chosen occupation, which is amazing. And so the question I have for you is, do you have any daily habits or rituals that keep you focused and on your journey? And I ask because we all recognize that hospitality, the food and supply chain are all quite volatile, quite high pressured industry. So what is it that you do to remain focused? Barbara, can I start with you?
Sure. I think my daily routine has been a journey. I've tried a combination of exercise and various things, but at the moment, what I'm doing, and thanks this, I can only thank Boris Johnson for this. I'm going out for a daily walk. I've been doing it since the second week of March, half an hour to 40 minutes every morning without fail. So that's a new routine, and it's the only thing I'll be thanking him for, trust me. In addition to that, I also kept up my daily meditation, but what I found was I actually needed to do it twice. So I've been meditating in the morning and in the evening just to make sure that I can really calm, because I might not sound like it, but I'm a naturally calm person. Pulse rate normally 60, 62. You know, I like to be in a calm state. So that's my daily ritual.
Cool. How about you, Jenna?
Yeah, so I've don't have my rituals in a routine. I found that interesting when I was thinking about it, because they're just little puzzle pieces that I have at ease and I use them when I need. Like dancing, like there's some girls on Instagram, Kukua Fitness, which are just having some amazing good moves. I just use 5 minutes.
Coincidentally.
Yeah. And they're just like good vibes. I'm dancing for those few minutes. Everything's reset, and I'm ready for whatever needs to be ring. And then sometimes power naps work. Sometimes talking to your plants. I really like having tea rituals. Just like little tips and tricks that then I just treat myself when I need to.
Cool. Didier, how about yourself?
Yeah, so despite me being on furlough, until at the end of the week, I was still at home, but I decided to make the best out of it. So I kept on waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So what I do, I go in the kitchen, I take a half a lemon, press it with hot water, and I drink it. Afterwards, what I do, I have some kind of mindfulness ritual where I'm trying to be grateful of a lot of things, that I have. Afterwards, I'm trying to do some physical exercises, stretching, and so on, to keep me in shape. And as well, I do some meditation. I have some guided meditation. I have like an app on my phone, and I try to do this like 10, 15, 20 minutes per day, at least.
Nice. Okay. Ire, how about yourself?
Well, I work at home. I try to work at home for the first half of the day, up until it's time for service, and then I go into the restaurant. So first half, I try to first of all, before I start working in the morning, I have to make sure that everything's tidy and clear, and all my room is. I make my bed. My room is spotless, and I think it just sets me up, and it just creates a mindset for achieving more. I'm also trying to take as many breaks as possible. If I start getting distracted, I just stop and take a break, instead of fighting it and trying to keep working. Yeah.
Sure. Cool. And my next question is about heritage, and I want to understand what your heritage is and how much of a part it played or not in your chosen career. Now, Barbara, I know you mentioned talking to your dad about being a nutritionist and his response. So can I start with you?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think it's typical across any immigrant family, whichever country they're from. It's always about your kids are going to grow up, they're going to be a doctor, an accountant, or a lawyer, get married, have kids, and that's how it goes. But I think for my generation, we did things differently, because I looked at my parents and their lifestyle, and because they were both working in the NHS, and they missed various school things. They had to work long hours. They had to work during the holidays. I was like, who wants to do that? Sadly, I hadn't done my homework, and that's exactly how the food industry operates. It's a 7-day-a-week operation, but nobody told me that, so I didn't know until I started. But I think your heritage, the work ethic, you do inherit it, and you do inherit that. Well, not so much inherit, you're told that you will have to work hard, and you don't challenge it. You just think that that's the norm. And it's only when you get out into the working world and you realize that there are people who don't work hard, but they still succeed. So, for that first 25 years, I was like, oh, doesn't everybody work like this? And apparently not. So that's probably what I've got from my heritage.
Nice. How about you, Ire?
I'm Nigerian. My parents are Nigerian. I'm Nigerian as well. Sorry, what was the question again? How does our heritage? How did my heritage?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question for you is, how much of a part did your heritage play in your initial career choice? Because obviously, you started in one place, you're now in another.
Okay.
Yeah, how much of an influence do you think that had?
Yeah. So it definitely did have an influence, in the sense that, as Barbara said, as an immigrant, you're, in my generation, you're expected to do something, either a lawyer or a doctor, or something that's going to bring money to the table. And hospitality was never really. I remember telling my dad before I went to university, or when I was in university, saying that I was interested in hospitality and I wanted to start a small business alongside. It was going to be like a concierge business, and he said, no, don't do that. Stay with your studies. Keep focus on your university. And I was like, okay, and that was the end of that. So probably things would have been different if I was probably from a different heritage and was encouraged to follow that hospitality passion.
Sure. Jenna?
Yeah, interesting. It wasn't like necessarily that the heritage defines your career or hospitality. It kind of defines how you make your choices and how you respond to what happens. And I like that Barbara really nailed it when she said, yeah, you just get through grit from the way you grow and from the way you experience everything that happens to you, and you realize that it's just really how you adapt and respond to it. So from that perspective, yeah, totally. But in the same time, it's always been nice that, like, part of my heritage being Senegalese, that country praises itself of being the pays du teranga, which is all about like hospitality. But that understanding of hospitality in there is just such a beautiful, complex thing, because there in Senegal, guests bring blessings. So you want to have guests to share with them, yes, your food, but not only, but your stories and the oral history and the warmth of it. So yeah, I've kind of always had that as a value that's to the core. And actually, that's how you experience hospitality everywhere when you travel in culture around countries. Like the amount of masala chai I had offered in India and I had to drink because there was the hospitality experience. And at times people who have the least offer the most. And that's for me like the nicest thing in human nature for, having a career in hospitality and trying to like offer people amazing moments.
Sure. No, that I totally agree. I'm going to move on to the next question now, and I'm going to direct that to you, Didier. And it's around inclusion. Now, obviously, since June of this year, we have witnessed a global awakening in many ways to inequalities that exist not only within the UK, but further afield. And so the question I've got for you, Didier, is what does inclusion mean to you moving forward?
Okay, so inclusion, for me, inclusion means like, let's say, like in professionally, inclusion means welcoming in your workforce, like all type of people, independently of their origins, gender, religious faith, sexual orientation, disabilities. And what I like, especially at PPHE at Park Plaza, is that we have more than 60 different nationalities with a very broad spectrum of people. And I believe that actually hospitality is probably one of the sector which is the most inclusive, because it's true that you see like people from so many different backgrounds, and that's what I like actually. You know, like in the company that I'm working for, is that you have this diversity and you have this inclusion.
Sure, thank you. And Ire, what does it mean to you, especially as a restaurateur in London, and I'd say in a space where there are not very many, Black-owned businesses operating in the space that you are?
Yeah, so I was just following up from what Didier said. I do believe that there's a very wide mix of people in hospitality from different backgrounds. However, I think you find that at different levels, people look different. If you get what I mean. So there's probably mixed faces in some jobs, and in some jobs you wouldn't see that much diversity. So I think for me, my experience, I mean, obviously we don't, as you said, there are not many people that look like Jeremy and I who own restaurants in central London, and that probably made it a bit harder. It took a bit longer, but it's not impossible. But I think inclusion will be a place where we're at the place where you have people, diversity in all ranks of hospitality. So from in all the different types of jobs, either from the owners to the people who are doing the manual jobs. So I think it will have to be more cut through the whole line for it to seem more inclusive.
Yeah, but for me, to be honest with you, it's true that I'm coming from France, from Paris, and I think that UK is much more diverse and inclusive than France. And what I discovered, actually, like I was actually, like very surprised, that at some management position and quite high position, you had people, like from African, Caribbean background, Asian background, which you don't see that often in France, to be honest with you. So for me, maybe I'm coming, with the point of view of a French, of a Parisian person. And Parisian, Paris is the capital, So, but when I came, to UK, when I came to London, I was actually very, very surprised, to see, like so many Black, Asian, Caribbean people actually having like a key position in some corporate companies, and not only like in entertainment, music, and so on, or sport, and so on and so on, but working in corporate company, lawyers, and all blue chip company.
I mean, I think for us, sorry, we've
you go. Okay, I was just going to follow on from Didier's point in that, because, and you'll have seen it as well, Lorraine, when you travel a lot. So I worked in supply chain, so going to lots of different countries, you do realise that when you're British and you go with somebody who's got a different heritage, you really are coming from a different position. And in other countries, people don't have the same opportunities. And because I spent a year working in France, I've worked in Germany, I've gone to countries like Morocco, Tunisia, and you do see how it's not as inclusive in those countries. And it's sometimes you just have to acknowledge that we are in a better place, even though things aren't brilliant here. Actually, some countries have it much worse. And I think it is important to acknowledge that we have to learn from that and make sure we don't end up like them, but also make sure that when we talk about inclusion, we are not just getting one kind of attitude and saying, well, this is what inclusion is. You've got to think wider than just what's in front of us, and look at, when we're organising away days or parties or events, have we excluded somebody whose religion doesn't accept that, or somebody whose physical ailment or disability doesn't accept that, or somebody who just doesn't like football. I spent 7 years in the office with people who just liked football, and that was tedious. They didn't really exclude me, they just liked football. And we need to embrace that, I think, that whole message.
I so agree with Barbara, because it's almost like diversity is you're invited to the ball, but what might happen, you might just sit there alone, nobody talks to you, and there's music you don't necessarily understand. But inclusion is actually being invited to dance already at that ball, and somebody showing you around and maybe explaining you about the food and how to perceive it. But then furthermore, and I'd hope that in a decade from now, we're going to look back at 2020 and be like, oh, we had no idea what we wanted. So much more is possible. And would be like, for now, having a say at what food and music will there be at the ball.
Absolutely.
That's kind of my simple way of being what it can be and what it is in a way.
Thank you. Super. Okay, so next question for you guys. I'm going to move on to your career and defining moments within your career to date. And I ask you to describe at what point during your career did you realize the trajectory that was possible? And I ask that because often hospitality or food and drink is often not viewed as a viable career choice where you can achieve great success. And obviously, I sit here today with the four of you who have. So I just want to understand, at what point in your life did you realize what was possible? I recognize for you, Arayan, you're going to talk now, or I'll ask you first in terms of, what was that switch for you from old career to making the decision to pursue new?
Yeah, it was a very scary decision, because I was going from a job that was quite secure and with a secure salary to unknown waters. Apart from, I didn't actually have any experience in hospitality. I mean, the only experience I had before we opened the restaurant was probably leading up to opening the restaurant and having to spend those 2 years looking for a space and cooking for people and working. Yeah, so that was probably my only experience. So it was nerve-wracking, but I just thought I had to do it, because if I didn't do it, I'll never know. And going into it, I mean, the first 6 months was very, very nerve-wracking, and we didn't know what we're doing, and blind leading the blind. But then we got there eventually. Yeah, I think for, in terms of a career defining moment, I think for us, or for me, was probably getting the Michelin star. That probably made things seem more possible, and it just so that we could achieve a lot more if we just with hard work, really.
Nice, brilliant, thank you. Jenna, can I ask you the same question?
Yeah, so kind of career defining moments have been happening, depends of like who you meet and the like whom. I don't really want to use the word meant you, but who can you feel comfortable to ask questions about? So what do you do? How do you do it? How does your industry work? What would you change about that? And then some people are just really great and share with you. So those are defining moments in a way when you meet those people, and they, in their own way, they're open part of ideas and ways of doing things. So those I've been thankful to have such people in different moments in my life, and then looking forward. But then I think 2012 was a bit of a year. Like sometimes when I'm reading one news extra than I should, and I all get about the state of the world, I'm just traveling back to the vibe I had in 2012 when I thought that the world's possible in many ways. And I've seen the first 3D printer ever, and I've heard what they were doing for prosthetics. And I was like amazed about social innovation and believe the internet is just the best thing. And I think it was just kind of in the same time I was doing my master's at the time, and it was like working sometimes at night, doing events, working in a bar, going to the masters, reading a lot. And I think sometimes when you stretch, you just grow so much in thinking what can you do and how many pathways there are out there that sometimes you can create your own because they just all interlapse.
Nice, okay, thank you. Barbara, was there a point within your career that you really realized what was possible?
Yeah, I think for a long time, I just thought you had to kind of do one thing, then go to the next level and the next level and just do that whole corporate thing. And I remember there was a chap I used to work with. He was an agronomist. So he was the one who was spending the time going through the fields, advising the farmers on what to do with their crops. And I didn't think his job was particularly exciting. And I remember him telling me about a project that he was doing that he'd been given a scholarship for. And I watched him work away at this, and I watched his trajectory. And I remember thinking, I can do that. Nobody ever said to me I can't, but no one ever said to me I could. And so it took me 10 years to apply for that same scholarship. So I was then in like my early 40s, applying for this scholarship and got it with the Nuffield Farming Trust. And that was a massive trajectory, because even as an organisation, from the outside, you don't necessarily think it's diverse, but boy, is it inclusive. Once you're in, they give you all of that networking, all of that support, all of that encouragement. You can't fail. You genuinely can't. And that's when I realized that if you have the right people around you, you can achieve absolutely anything. And since I did that scholarship, I have not looked back. So it's only been 3.5 years, but from like speaking at the UN, from being given an MBE, the list is just endless. And none of those things were on my wish list as a child or even as an adult. So I've even surpassed my own limits, if that makes sense. So yeah, the trajectory is amazing.
Super. We've got one final question for you guys, and it's around how we support the next generation of young Black people entering into the industry. What are your thoughts on the hows? Barbara, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm currently a director of the Oxford Farming Conference, and we've been trying to look at this over the last couple of years and saying we're in an industry where the average age is getting older and older, and we don't have enough young people coming in because people don't see it as an attractive industry to be in. And I think that's a combination of things. It's not necessarily high paid, but we don't sell it as an interesting place to be. And I think we need to do a better job liaising with the education sector and saying, we have got great careers in the food industry, but also we've got this urban and rural divide. So I grew up in a market town in northern England, which is how I've been able to enter the industry so seamlessly, because that was the world I lived in. But if you grow up in an urban environment like Manchester or Birmingham, you would never know what a tractor looks like because you've never got close to it, or what a crop of potatoes or carrots or broccoli in a field looks like. So it's about understanding that there's amazing careers that still include things like artificial intelligence, robotics, and science. It's not just about digging crops out of a field and putting them in a factory, but we need to engage and make sure that we tell people these careers are out there and you can get really passionate about doing them. And they do good because you're working with food and you're feeding people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, lovely. Nice. Irae, add to that?
Yeah, I think, as she said, Barbara said, education is really important. Also, just I think through mentoring as well, choosing young people to mentor. I think the more you see examples of people that look like you doing things, the more it seems possible. So obviously, if we do find ourselves in a position where we can influence or include more people of color, then I think we should, just so that they know that actually that it does exist and people can actually do these things.
Thank you. Jenna, do you want to add?
Yeah, there's two things that are quite important from my perspective. So one is for those who already kind of opened the door or like found the door and keeping doors open, but actually kind of helping people getting the social capital to understand what are the different doors and how to open them, and creating these opportunities for like people as diverse as possible to like meet each other, to grow, to discuss. But then there's the second thing, which is some might not know, because that's what it means coming from disadvantaged backgrounds at times. It's that you don't really understand how some things might work. And then the question is like, where are the doors built? So how can we build doors in people's access ways? So I guess it's really finding ways to reach as many people and to see what are their paths and their needs. And I guess that's what I really like about working in Diageo. We have a program, Learning for Life. And one great thing about the power of like large entities is to instigate change at scale. And there's been like hundreds of thousands of people who've been going through these programs. There's even a great story in World Class with a bartender that started through a learning from life program in kind of a favela, and he ended up to win World Class for the country and represent. And yeah, his life story has changed, but he's constantly instigating change himself. That's the beauty of it. It's a domino effect into like getting more people to be aware that their dreams are possible.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Didier?
So for me, I think that it's our responsibility to show that despite your circumstances, the color of your skin, your economical, social background, everything is achievable through hard work, commitment. And I believe that inspiring people have always led by example to leave a trace and a template for the future generation. And I think that's what is important. People just need, to find some people, that they can more easily identify with,
Yeah, absolutely. And, that really is one of the reasons why I set up the network that I did. It, just being able to amplify voices and role models from different backgrounds, being visible and accessible. And I think that's super important. The power of role models, you just can't deny. And
and I think that using this social media and organizing this type of panels contributes, to create awareness, and highlight, diversity, talent in hospitality. And I think that's a great thing that you do.
Thank you. And so we've come to the end of the discussion. So thank you guys for your input. And now we have a few questions for yourselves. So the first one is for you, Ere. I was trying to find a fine dining African restaurant in London, like your Okoye being a Michelin star. How come there are so few fine dining restaurants in London? What's your view on the why? What's your thought?
Why are there so few? Because it's hard. I guess it depends. If the fine dining African restaurants are being started by Africans, I guess it'd be a different answer to you. She's asking if they're started by non-Africans. If they're started by Africans, I guess it will be harder because Africans probably don't. Fine dining, there's a certain clientele and a certain market, and if, as I said before, as examples, if you don't see, and also the food has always been from a certain part of the world. It's not really ever been African. There's never really been African food being spotlighted in fine dining restaurants. So for that reason, you always obviously have more European people. Because that's the kind of food that we see, and that food hasn't really been put on that level before, and I guess that's what we're trying to do. I'm just trying to make sure that there are ingredients and there is a lot of there's a wealth of flavor in Africa that can be used at that high level. I think hopefully people start to see that, and I think it just starts with exposure, and then. And because Africans do have the ability or the wealth to eat in fine dining restaurants, and because Africans eat in other fine dining restaurants that are not African, so I think that it's possible. It just hasn't really taken off yet.
Yeah, and I think that I completely agree with you, and I think it's yet. I think over the past 12 to 18 months, we've seen quite a few African restaurants opening up that are not like your mom and pop style restaurants, that are elevating and evolving that food. So I think the future is really bright, just by some of the amazing restaurants I've seen this year alone. So I'm hopeful. A question from Zicky Zach. Could you give us one suggestion, one practical idea for hospitality businesses to increase BAME across all levels of leadership? You want to take that, Jenna?
Yeah, I have So I think that, for example, at Park Plaza, we are going in a certain school in certain neighborhood, and we do these open days where you have actually, like people from the hotel coming, to the school and talking about, like hospitality, hotel business, and so on, in order to inspire young people, especially like from certain schools, certain neighborhood with a vast majority of Black, Afro, African, and Caribbean people. And many times, you have young people who were not necessarily actually interested in hospitality. Suddenly, they discover, that actually there are some managers, there are some people, there are some cook. For example, the head chef in our restaurant, French restaurant, is a Caribbean chef, for example. And whenever you show these young people that actually there are some opportunities, suddenly, it inspires them and give them, probably more ideas, for them to pursue this type of career.
Jenna, can I ask you if you have any thoughts?
Yeah, build places that are quite open. So then it's easier to kind of have people come and put a pattern on them. And then kind of the culture constantly advances, rather if it's a small or a large organization. It could be something smaller than like a local retail restaurant. But then when you consider, okay, how can we create some diversity, you got to really just open the ideas. And for me, it happened. I worked in a team in 2009 in London, and I never realized I've never worked in a team so diverse. And our turnover was so small of the Brompton Club. The team was like family, but it was a decision that Miguel took at the time, and him, a badger, and he like purposely said, no, this is going to be open. There's not going to be no 3 Italians, no 5. I know it's just going to be people that are coming from all over. So then everyone has to be kind of different. And it turned magic when they said, it doesn't need to be a main language. Let's open it to as much as possible. I kind of never realized the privilege until I've never seen it again.
Yeah, sorry, I think, I mean, we struggle sometimes, actually. In fact, we definitely struggle to hire people from Black or African origin, just because you put the application out there, you try and reach as far as you can in terms of all the channels for recruiting, but then you don't really get that many applicants. I mean, chefs we do, and I think chefs is fine, but on the front of house side, I think I don't know, maybe we're looking in the wrong places, but it'll be good to know how the best way to find people, because we obviously want the restaurant to look more diverse, but it's just the applications we get are not really, we don't really get any applications from people from other African backgrounds or descent.
Okay, cool. Next question is from Danielle. She has a question for you. Who were your Black role models whilst working within the industry? If you had any at all, actually. And I know that I've worked in the hospitality industry for 18 years, and I've always looked outside of the industry and often to America. But anyway, Barbara, any thoughts? Any role models that you would look to?
Black role models were mainly for me in the health sector. So when you look to the NHS, there were people who were absolutely, leading the way. But I didn't see that in my corporate career. They just weren't there in the same number. Or it was like a dim and distant, you're walking down the corridor and you might see another Black face in the corridor, and that's about it. So I didn't grow up with the aspiration that there would be a Black role model for me to follow. I grew up with the aspiration that I'd find people who were the right people to help me get to do what I wanted to do. And that's what I had to focus on. If I tried, especially working outside of London, because the population density of the BAME community is so low, you can't stick with just a few BAME people, otherwise you wouldn't be able to go anywhere or do anything. So you have to make sure that you're fully integrated. But I think it would have been great to have that, but it just wasn't an option for me, living where I was living and doing what I was doing.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mia, I had like actually a role model when I was actually living in Miami, and after when I was working in Ibiza, I worked with Eric Omores. He's a French black from origin descendants, who was actually one of the executive director of Nikki Beach. I don't know if you know Nikki Beach. You know, it's the beach club. You know, so they opened, you know, like everywhere. Of course, they started in Miami, and they had like Marrakesh and Saint-Tropez and all of these places. And actually, it was quite you know, like I was really proud actually, you know, to see this African man, you know, who was like at the head of this huge company and opened, you know, like so many places in the world. He was huge, you know, and I think that he was like he's still, you know, but he was like a really great name, like in hospitality worldwide. So, and I worked with him, and it was really like an example for me to follow.
Nice. Dana, did you have any black role models specifically in the industry?
Yeah, I guess actually when I mentioned Miguel, yes, he was my manager, and he's Bajan, and he's just been incredible in the way he looks at everything, the way he takes his pace, and how he like kind of built his career. But then I get role models sometimes not necessarily by people who are just only more advanced in my careers, that, you know, it could have been my barback that was just a hardworking black guy that was just struggling to like, well, do his studies and work as well, and, you know, to like keep a family. So yeah, I did.
Yes. Okay, super. I'm just going to check if there's any more questions, and if there is not, just bear with me. I think that might be it for questions. Is it? Yes, I think it is. Yeah, actually, we've got one more. What's your biggest win in your career so far? I know, Ira, you mentioned about your Michelin star.
Yeah, it probably is that.
Yeah, Barbara mentioned her MBE and you know, work at the UN. Jenna, Didier, do you guys have anything that you want to share before we close?
Well, I don't have an MBE or a Michelin star, but my biggest win when somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to consider this. I haven't thought. Thank you." And yeah, that happens at loads of whiskey shows and moments and meetings with like innovation team. And yeah, every day wins. The biggest one is just coming with a thank you. But I hope I get to update at some point with a shiny star of a thank you.
You're aspiring to shiny stars, okay. No, thank you is a thank you, and the star is a star, so I understand that. And so we've kind of come to the end of the conversation, unfortunately. I've really enjoyed talking to you all today. It's been super interesting to hear your journeys. And I really do look forward to being able to have these conversations in person with food and drink and interaction and networking that follows, because, I mean, I love that, but that's just me. So the one thing that I must do now, actually, so we were running a giveaway for the past week and a half. And we are giving away a food hamper filled with loads of tasty food and drink from those Black-owned brands that are sponsoring the event. And so we've used a random number generator, and I can announce that the winner is Eating with Precious. And so, Precious, I will DM you within the next 24 hours, pick up your address and send them on to you. If I don't hear from you, I will start eating them. So, yeah, respond. And so, thank you, panel. I want to thank my sponsors again: Life of a Tree, Woodford and Warner, Schwen Schwen by Maria Bradford, Jerk It Up Sauce by Danes Catering, Echo Brewery, and Sham Sham Hot Sauce. It's been an amazing couple of events, and I want to thank you all for joining us. For those of you that haven't subscribed to our newsletter, please do. Follow us on our news channel, or social channels even, and just keep an eye out, because we're very much at the start of the journey here at BAME Hospitality, and we've got loads in the works. and we want to make sure that you're in the loop on what we're working on and when. So it's good night from us. Thank you for joining, and we'll no doubt see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you very much.